We're here, we're queer, and we will continue to change the world. Welcome to Queer Changemakers. I'm your host, Justin Mezzapin, pronouns he, him, and each episode will share stories of LGBTQ plus individuals who are taking action to make a difference in our communities and beyond. Welcome to another episode of Queer Changemakers. This is the second episode in our series on mental health. And today we have Sensei, Raven Ekundayo. Glad to have you.
Thank you so much. I am very happy to be here. So first, I would like to use the quote. They say that a jack of all trades is a master of none. Yet, more often than not, better than a master of one. And oftentimes they don't quote the full quote. And it was so important for me to finally hear that quote because I'm a jack of many, many trades. I do believe I'm a master of quite a few, but I like to lead with that before going into who I am. So I am a sensei, ordained sensei. I am a master Reiki teacher. I am a certified life coach, yoga instructor for Ashtanga and somatic. I am a certified breath instructor. I am a shadow work therapist. Oh, wow. I am a researcher in public health. I am a public, I am I'm sorry, a published author of sci-fi, uh, former editor-in-chief of a magazine. We could keep going, but yes, that is some of the things that I am or have accomplished in this life.
You are also going to be the first two-parter episode talking about two different things. And you just gave me a list of 12 different things. So we'll see how to split that up. But either way, it'll be good. Usually, my next question would be, how'd you get into that? But I don't think that may not work. That may not work too well. But do you want to share a little bit about your journey?
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. And there is a through line for everything, actually. So everything is wellness for me. And it started in elementary school. Well, I mean, I guess it started when I was a kid, when it comes to me and being an empath and just being open to the world. Conversations that I would have with my grandmother. I have a mole for those of you who are listening and can't see, I don't know if you can see this, Justin. I have a mole in the middle of my hand. And my grandmother called this a healing mole when I was little.
Hmm.
And so she told me that I would be a healer when I grew up.
Wow.
And so I've spent the majority of my life being in a very holistic and wellness space. And so when I say that it's a through line, it crosses everything that I've done. Any job that I've had, I've worked in corporate America and I found a way to bring wellness into these places that had absolutely nothing to do with it, you know? Now, when we talk about where I currently work, when it comes to us helping us, they were built on this foundation of being holistic. And so it just so happens that me coming in there as a wellness practitioner fit perfectly with the original idea of that organization. So when I say that that's how it's all connected, for the entirety of my life, from where I was as a kid to where I am now, it's always been about healing. And my healing has shown up in various different ways according to where I've been in my journey.
And it's great to have a grandmother who could see that in you.
Very much.
And also to look at something that's different. And I can see myself or others being like, this thing is different about me. What do I do with this? But like having that elder voice guide you in that direction, that's pretty awesome.
Absolutely.
And like, yeah, it's you say wellness is everything and everything you do in the through line, which is beautiful, but also like, shouldn't that just be shouldn't that just be the default? I feel like for many of the things that I do, I want to
Yes.
feel like it's in, I don't want to say directly wellness, but I want to feel well doing it, right? Like what's work without wellness? What's like family without wellness? What's fun without wellness in a way? I guess I think that's sort of part of the goal.
You say that, and it brings such an interesting conversation because I talk about wellness, but I work in mental health and wellness.
Hmm.
And when you said that, you made me think about my shadow work therapy
Hmm.
and how you say, that should be the end goal for a lot of people. However, often we find when it comes to family, when it comes to relationships that are romantic, in all of these instances, when it comes to friends,
Hmm.
uh, there are traumas that we deal with. There are shadows that we have yet to bring to the fore. There's our mirror self that we refuse to look at. And because of that, it makes what we consider to be wellness a difficult thing at times to be able to really grab onto. And we are often, and this shows up in a myriad of different ways, we're often afraid to really get to the core of who we are. And because of that, it makes it so it's difficult for us to go in the direction you just said. Like, shouldn't all of us want to move in a way of wellness? We may want that. But
Hmm.
the thing is getting to that is the journey. And so that's what I think is so beautiful. People are often looking for the finish line in all types of things in life. But when it comes to mental health and wellness, it's not about the finish line, it's about the journey. You could be 75 years old and you're still on the journey of wellness.
Yeah. Okay. Two questions, clarifying
Hmm.
questions, let's say. How would you define wellness?
Hmm.
And then how would you define mental health? And it's your definition, not like a one size fits all. This is,
Right, right. So, wellness. I believe that wellness plays a part in every aspect of who we are. And oftentimes, when people hear the word wellness, they don't realize that it plays a part when it comes to your physical, your mental, your spiritual, your emotional.
Mhm.
And when we look at the world that we live in, especially when it comes to, I tell people all the time about how I've been blessed to work in public health and mental health, all of these different areas. And I find that in working in these different areas, they're often not connected. You know, I work in mental health, and in working in mental health, I find that there's very little that they know when it comes to public health. I
Mhm.
work in public health, and there's a lot that they don't know when it comes to mental health, but they consider all of it to be wellness. And so for me, the idea and definition of wellness is taking into consideration the fullness of who we are and being people who understand that we have to begin at the root of everything of who we are and to grow from there in order to be well. If we're not focused on the root and growing from there, and to be honest, we could talk about the earth itself, meaning the root, or we could talk about our root chakra.
Mhm.
It's like from either of those spaces, allowing ourselves to truly grow from that is how we are able to fully get to a place of understanding all aspects of what wellness is. If we deny one, we deny all. You can't be in a good mental space if you're not in a good emotional space. You can't be in a good space when it comes to how you feel emotionally if you're not in a good place physically. All of it is connected. So that's my definition for wellness. Now, when it comes to mental health,
Yeah.
though everything begins at our root, and again, I come to our root chakra. Our first chakra is our root chakra,
Mhm.
and we end with our crown. However, though we start at the root and we make our way up and we end with the crown is so very important for the entirety of our body. And I can't imagine where I would be right now if I didn't pay the respect on a daily basis that I do to mental health.
Mhm.
I often believe that because I started being diagnosed with my different mental health journeys. I don't call them illnesses or disorders. I started being diagnosed with my mental health journeys 2 years ago, only two.
Oh, wow.
And for a lot of people, they're like, wow, that's really late in life. But I don't think anything happens by chance. I think everything happens for a reason.
Mhm.
And so I believe that the universe wanted me to be someone who was an advocate who was going through the journeys. So when I talk to people with this mental health podcast that I have, they don't just believe that I'm someone speaking from the wellness side of things. They're like, oh, no, you're really going through what it is that I'm going through, you know? And
Yeah.
so you really grasp what's happening. So for me, my definition of mental health is that mental health is mental health is sadly ignored, and that takes me towards shadow work because we ignore mental health because we're afraid of what it is that's going on up there. We have made it into this horrible monster of a thing to assume that we could be different in any way. And I think the reason why the universe chose me to be on this journey is because I've always embraced being different. If you go online and if you Google anything about Raven Ekundayo, you will see that I call all of those who walk with me the Misfit Universe. I created my magazine back in 2006, and
Mhm.
we've always talked about being misfits. To call me weird is a compliment, normal is an insult. So it's like when I think about these diagnoses that I received, it's the same thing as if the universe made a decision that I was going to go on the journey of being HIV positive. I don't see that as a negative, you
Mhm.
know? I turn all of these things into a blessing. So I'm on the journey of being HIV positive now. That means that I'm going to be an advocate for everyone who feels as though they should be silent because of it, which helps my mental health. And then hopefully it's going to help yours as well. Mental health is freedom. And oftentimes I have to talk
Cool.
myself through things. I
Mhm.
have to talk myself through things to get to the actual word. Mental health is freedom. When you reach a point where you can be one with your mental health and the shame and the stigma is gone, it's freedom. Baby, when you can walk into a room and you can say, I'm HIV positive, and what? And I'm living my life beautifully. Freedom. That is what mental health is for me. To be able to be diagnosed with bipolar 1 and immediately be able to get online and start educating people about what it is. And before we will move on, I just want to say one more thing about how unbelievable the universe is. About 3 years ago, I started my podcast in 2017. About three
Oh,
years
wow.
ago, I created an episode. I'm sorry, not an episode, an entire week dedicated to the bipolar journey.
Wow.
Out of the entire time I have had my podcast, we have had episodes dedicated to all different areas of mental health. There's never been an entire week dedicated to anything other than the bipolar journey.
Hmm.
I had people come on who were brave enough to tell their stories from Monday to Friday, to tell their stories. All of these years later, I get diagnosed.
Hmm.
And I'm like, what are the odds that that would be the thing I did an entire week with? The universe doesn't do anything by mistake. Nothing happens by happenstance. And I knew that I was ready to walk in this freedom, and I believe the universe knew that I was ready as well. So, all this freedom.
Wow. So many nuggets and things shared there. But sometimes it's hard because it's like, okay, but these things are just too random, right? It's too random. So I guess there is a purpose, but then there's like the harder parts of life. Sometimes it's like, I don't want that to be the good thing.
Yeah,
I don't want that person leaving life, that person losing their life to be the good thing that the universe was like, this must happen.
yeah.
Um, and at the same time, it happened and I can't change that. And
Mhm.
how do I live in freedom with that knowledge. So yeah, so I love that about mental health being freedom, because that's definitely going to be in the teaser for this episode. So one, there's that, and two, I do think that that's important, because I think we all want freedom, and we all are not free in certain, and we all may experience non-freedom in certain
Mhm.
ways. And a lot
And
of that could be the inside game, that our crown chakra being like, no, you shouldn't do this thing for whatever random story. Uh,
right, right.
and like, and when your brain creates that box, that
Yeah,
cage, right? Your life gets smaller and you don't feel the freedom. And then you look at other people and like, oh, I want to be free like them. Oh, I'm gonna say it. Yeah. So sometimes when I
yeah.
think about the queer community, and when I think about, like, especially our gender expansive siblings, there is a
Mm.
lot of pushback, because people are like, no, you can't do that. That's no, right? That's not possible. It can't be,
Absolutely.
right? I am in this
Absolutely.
box, and I was forced. I am in this box because this is the way I was raised and what people told me, and I have to stay in this box. And like, look at you, just breaking this box wide open, and then our kids are seeing it, and they want to break the box too, and that's not fair because I don't understand them. It's, in a
Yeah,
way, a lot of the reason. Ooh, yeah, I'll say it. A lot of the reason why I think there's a lot of this pushback, this fear, this phobias and hatred, is because we don't like that freedom, because I I'm in a box, I'm in prison, and you're telling me I don't
yes,
have to be. My world would explode if there's if there's more than two ways to see gender. uh
absolutely.
right, and that's,
Absolutely.
yeah. Oh, okay, so now, because I said that, now I want someone to be like mental health for the straight community, and it's just like, here's freedom. Here's what queer freedom means for you,
For
and
you.
your mental health journey.
So
Here's, yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. Because I was
uh,
gonna say I created something like that before I moved to Atlanta.
Love it. So tell me more. What is the thing that you created that I said this should be cool to have, and you're like, oh yeah, it's been there. I You left that off the CV earlier, so.
I did. Because I was like, it's too many things. But yes, so I created an event, and it's so funny how quickly things happen, because in my mind, I created this so much sooner than when I looked at the first flyer. The Healing Space is the name of my podcast.
Yeah.
However, before the Healing Space began as a podcast, it started as an event that I hosted in Baltimore. I created the podcast in Atlanta. But while living in Baltimore in 2012, which is like, wow, I created this event that I wanted to be different from a open mic that I had. I had an open mic called Storytellers. And I was like, I want to make something very different from this open mic, because the open mic was welcoming. And it was where a lot of cis het people got to learn just how beautiful the queer community was. Because when you're a part of the misfit universe, all of us come together. There is no shaming anybody. And so they all share the same space, and everyone would be like, I walked away from that space so different. I did a photo shoot one time based off of what it is that I do with all of my different wellness. And one of my queer friends, when it was time to leave, and I tell this story all the time because it fits in so much of everything I do. When he was leaving, his beautiful heart, he said, this entire day made me feel really uncomfortable. And I said, why? He said, it made me feel really uncomfortable because I'm not used to being in any place where people are this happy the entire time. He said, I couldn't make peace with if it was fake or if it was real. And in the end, when I realized it was real, I realized it was your energy. He said, because this is how you are at our job all the time. But I have
Mhm.
never been in a space where your energy is everything. Like when we were doing the photo shoot, everyone who walked in to have their pictures taken, standing ovation. Wasn't anything I did. Nothing I did. It was the energy of the room. The photographer, everybody would clap for everyone who came in. And he was like, it was overwhelming and made me uncomfortable. And I was like, but this is what we create. So I say all of that to say that when we started doing the healing space originally, the whole goal was to have a very what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas type environment. So
Mhm.
we would never have more than maybe 20 people. It was a place called Peace and a Cup of Joe in Baltimore, downtown. And it was myself, it was a psychotherapist, and a professor of English. And so the three of us moderated, because I wanted to, we were moderators, we're not hosts. So we were moderators, and we would bring in an artist, and we would have them perform four different pieces according to something they've been going through in life. So they would share with us, the moderators, something they had been going through, something they needed to have a catharsis for.
Yeah.
And so they performed the songs, and the audience had an opportunity to ask them questions after every song. And these questions are things they may have never heard before. So it gives them a chance to stop and pause, and there would be tears, and there would be anger, and there would be joy, because I never thought about this. And you listening to my music gave me an opportunity to think about these things. And that would be the first hour. The second hour, we would turn it on the audience. And this is where I say what you said took place. There were more straight men who cried in that space than anyone else. Their fear of crying around these trans women, around these clear queer men, around straight Black women, it all went away. Everyone just let everything fall away from them. And the vulnerability was allowed to exist there. There were no pictures taken, there was nothing recorded. There was the conversation and an opportunity for you to feel safe enough to just be you. Stigma's gone. For men to be able to sit there and cry, and to have someone queer walk up to them and rub their back. There was no get away from me's, nothing. It was, I feel seen. That is probably one of the most important things I have ever done. And that's why I'm bringing it to DC now, because I'm like, it's time for us to do it again. And so I'm really, really excited for what is this coming Wednesday. By the time this goes up, it may be gone. But
Okay, so
this
today
coming
is Monday. So you're saying on Wednesday of this week.
Wednesday, May 15th, 2024, the Healing Space is coming to
Okay.
Thirst Lounge
Oh,
in DC.
okay.
You said, oh.
Okay. I see. I see. I see. That's the best way I can respond with words, as my brain is like, what's on the schedule, what's happening, how does how does this all work? But okay. And then the other part of me is like, what would it take to get this episode out before? Um, or maybe it'll just have to be a follow-up of how to go and then the next one.
Right, right.
Is it how will this one be? Will it be just like the last one, the one that you did in Baltimore in 2012?
So
Or
here's the interesting thing. I'm really looking forward to seeing what the energy is going to give. And I say that because as I'm talking to you 2 days before the event, we have 10 tickets left. Already, we have more people than I told you we had at the original shows.
Mhm.
So this isn't going to be a thing where it's going to be, nice and quiet and comfy. I mean, no, we're going to be upstairs. The door will be closed. So it's not going to be like the noise from downstairs is coming up there.
Mhm.
However, our very first event is going to be a panel. We've never had a panel. Like I said, in the past, we would have an artist come up and perform.
Yeah.
So our very first topic is going to be called, make sure I get the name right. Um, the communication between the intersection of child. I didn't mess that whole thing up.
Um, mhm,
I'm like,
mhm.
let me go to my page so I can tell you what it's called. Okay, I'm like, how is it I created the thing? And I communication across the gender spectrum. There we go. Communication across the gender spectrum. And I think it was because that wasn't the original name and we changed it.
Mhm.
But my whole goal for this one, I wanted to start off with a conversation within our community, you know?
Yeah.
Of course, we want it to be open to everyone to be able to come there. And I believe that my friend who owns Thirst feels the same way. Even though it's queer, but Black and queer based, everyone's welcome. And
Mhm.
that's how I see the healing space. The healing space is Black and queer based. However, everyone's welcome. But before that happens, we need to have a conversation in our community. We need to have a conversation about why queer men view trans people the way they do. The fact that there are a lot of people, men who may be very, show up in their divine feminine, who still
Mhm.
look at trans women and feel as though, who are you? You know, why do you look like that? Why do you act that way? Why do you believe that I should be in the streets fighting for you? On the flip side, there are trans women and there are trans men who may look at queer people or straight people and be like, I'm not going to give you the space and the grace to learn about me and to understand my journey because you should know already, And this is happening because of their own trauma. It's not just because this is how it is.
Yeah.
So I want to have conversations about that, about why is it that as queer people, we don't properly see our non-binary folk, our trans folk,
Mhm.
And as trans people, why is it that we often don't, and not we, but our trans brothers and sisters and non-binaries, don't they allow their trauma of what other people have done to them to allow us to be invisible to them a lot, and for their anger to take over, for their shadow to jump out, and for them to make us feel as though we don't get to learn unless we educate ourselves, though we all belong to this beautiful big community. What happens when we start having those conversations in house and we begin to talk about that? That's what's going to happen on Wednesday.
Okay. Wow. Cool. Did I just open up my schedule on Wednesday? Probably. But we'll have to. That's a conversation for Tuesday, Justin. Not right now. No, but I definitely I appreciate that. I appreciate it a lot. And there's this thing that I don't know, maybe it's one of these tensions of inclusion and self identity, communities based around an identity.
Yeah.
Where yes, everyone is welcome, and sometimes you want to be with your people.
Hmm.
And it's not that people don't, but there's this tension there. And I think I don't know what the future holds, but I
Yeah.
do think the future is like a both and. Like the
Hmm.
idea that like there's one way to do mental health.
Yeah.
There's one way to be one bar for everyone to go to and enjoy equally. That is not that is not the case. Some
Right.
bars are more loungy, some bars are clubs, some people like to dance, some people like to do hookah. Some people like a certain type of music that's a little different. Uh,
Yes.
and it's like some people like the oldies, some people like different oldies. Um,
Right. Different
right? Like
oldies.
you can't. No, I don't say you can't. It can be really hard to have four different types of music in a single place.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll say. So like it's like all music is welcome here. We will play all music, but we can't play it all at the same time. Uh,
Right.
and you have to have the people and the right DJ who can mix and mingle that, right? Like there are people who can do some good things with music where it's like, okay, so you took that song and that one and you put it on
You
this
did
other
that.
beat and you like
Right.
connected them. Yeah, in another life I would be a DJ and I would just take the two most opposite songs or people and figure out a way to like match them up together in a weird
Yes.
way where people will be like, I think it would be like what someone said at your event. I'm like, that was really uncomfortable.
Yes.
And as a DJ, you probably wouldn't want that as a review. It was really uncomfortable. I'm not sure if I liked it or didn't. Um, probably probably not why I'm a DJ. No, probably
Right.
why I'm a DJ. Um, yeah, but okay, but that sounds really good, and I do think I'm not gonna say just with trans people. I think it's many different people of identities. There's this
Yes.
idea of get with it,
Hmm.
and there's no time. There's not a lot of room for nuance, and I'm gonna say that probably sometimes the way I see it is probably more other communities for sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, Especially I'm thinking like the liberal kinds of people who
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it's a weird thing. So you also live in DC. So there's a liberal way sometimes where it's like we need to be on the right side already before we knew.
Yes.
And that experience created what I now know as Nelly's being a black bar on the weekends. Because a lot of the white people are like, we saw what they did. They are racist. They are terrible people. They should not be there. I cannot go there anymore. And then enough white people said that, and then the black people were like, well, did we just if they're not going there and they're gonna play better music, I guess this is now ours on the weekends. Like it's ours. And
That's
a
what
lot
I
of white
was
people are like, I
thinking.
can't go in there. I can't go in there because of their stance. And I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, sounds good. We just created Nelly's to be a black bar because
I'm
they
so
were like,
confused
yeah,
by it. Because I like when I moved up here, that's what I was told when I was moved up here. When I moved up here, I was told, people are boycotting it and everything. And I was like, oh, okay. But then I have friends who are still going. So I
yeah.
was like, okay, and I would go with them. And I'm like, all I see are black people. I don't what? Like,
I
I was really confused. I was like, well, but why are we all I see are us? Like, what's happening?
Yeah, it's actually interesting because when the incident went down, that Pride post pandemic, there was like a list of demands, which I don't really understand how that would work out. To be like, we want Nelly's to sell it and make this a bar for people of color and like some other things, and that's cool.
Right.
Well, those are interesting demands. I'm like, I don't know if you can sell it to make it a bar. Like, there's a whole lot of money in the way, and someone would have to put that up. But because of a lot of people, a lot of non-black people boycotted and continue to boycott and protest. It's a pretty central bar that used to have good food. I think it might still, I don't know. But it's a pretty central bar that doesn't ever have a cover. And now there is a black bar in DC. And now we also have Thirst. So we're getting more.
Right.
We
So
lost a lot of the older ones that previous bars that we had. But it's like, it's interesting how yeah, there's a joke I want to make and I don't want to make it because I don't know the name and it might be a little rude. But like that person got, you know,
yeah.
escorted out of Nelly's in the worst way possible. So
Hmm.
that Nelly's could now be a black bar.
Right.
And now we also have Thirst, so it's like cool. We can diversify where the money goes, where our funds go as well. But it's
Very
like
much.
it's an interesting I would love for someone who knows research or whatever to be able to like scientifically say how this just worked out, how that was created in one of the worst ways possible, but it was still created. Um,
I I'm sure I could go back to my research team, but they would probably look at me like, that's kind
well,
of at
yeah,
the bottom of the
it's just interesting to see like how things can change quickly and how
Yes.
like how a bad experience and then other people boycotting created this new space for other for so it's just interesting. It's interesting. But all that to say, um, sometimes in liberal spaces, people expect everyone to be super woke and super ahead of the game. And then there's like a policing that happens because we didn't
Hmm.
do the thing right. And then that sort of limits people's freedom in a way. People are like, oh, I don't want to say this because then somebody might take it wrong, but I don't really know how to answer this question. And I have this other question, but if I ask it, am I going to be rude? Is someone going to be like, how dare you get out of this? You're no longer one of
You
us.
no longer,
Uh,
yes.
yeah, get,
Yes.
you know, and yeah, and having conversations on both sides, I don't say both sides, having conversations with different types of people. Uh,
Yes.
because again, part of it is the other thing about inclusion that I'm like, you can exclude people because of inclusion. And in
Yes.
my mind, that's okay. Because both, it's like we have people with different opinions, but we all have the opinion that we're all human and we're all going to be here together and we're all going to try to have a good time. So if you don't agree with those, this is not your space.
I am a huge proponent of like I was at Thirst the other night and I was there for my job recruiting. And so I'm talking to a group of people, and we end up getting into a conversation I would normally walk away from, but it started off spiritual. And once I realized they were good people, we started going towards religion. And I was like, okay, I don't have to walk away because your energy is good. One guy ended up saying that he was atheist, and I got really excited. And he was like, "Why?" And I was like, "I've always been that way." You know, it's like I'll meet a black queer guy and he'll say, "I'm a Republican." And I'm like, oh, "Really?" And he's like, "But you're not." And I'm like, "I know." Like, can we talk? And he's like,
Yeah.
"You want to talk?" I'm like, "Yes." I don't want to be surrounded by nothing but people who think the same way that I do. You know, that's boring to me. I want to hear your point of view. You're atheist. Nice. Talk to me about how you got there. And so I began to have a conversation with him about, because his whole thing was that you can't have trauma if you were brought up in the church, because atheism comes from this. And I was like, "Oh, no, so I need you to understand." And I started breaking down to him the way that atheism, there are two different types of atheism. And when I was explaining it to him, because he was someone who, and I think I'm sorry, I may have misquoted him, he didn't share that he came from the church. But when I finished explaining to him about somebody who from birth
Mhm.
didn't believe in God, as opposed to someone who was born, raised in the church, and then made a decision not to believe in God, are two totally different things. And when I said that to him, he was like, oh, because he was surprised, because I was like, you didn't have to tell me that you went to church. I could tell it
Mhm.
the way that you were rallying against it, that you were someone who grew up in the church, and that's why you don't believe in God anymore. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but I love having these kind of conversations. Unlike some people, where if you were to say that you were atheist to them, immediately, like you were saying earlier, you can't sit with us. Like, I have nothing else to say to you. There's nothing else for me to learn. And it's like, if we stay in these silos, how are we going to grow? You know? And
Mhm.
I can't get with this whole idea again, why I embrace being a weirdo, why I embrace being a misfit. Because for me, that means that I can go anywhere. I can walk into any space. I
Mhm.
can walk in a space where people who you say that all of them are racist against black people. I'll walk in, and the first thing I'll say to them now is, explain to me why. I'm not going to be mean. I'm going to sit down and I'm going to be like, let's have, I just want to hear what it is that you have to say. Cause that's where my mind is, you
Yeah.
know? This whole idea, Justin, of we have to all exist within these spaces and that's it. How does the world work out that way? It's one thing if you're like, okay, I'm white and I like to hang around other white people. Bet there's nothing wrong with that, because there are lots of black people that are like, I just want to hang around black people. But is it happening because there is a fear of the other people? Do you have an ignorance of the other people? Or are you completely educated on what this other group of people have been through? And you're like, you know what? We can meet up, we can party, we can do all of this. But at the end of the day, my people, as far as where I grew up, that is where I feel most comfortable. We have no hard feelings, and that's it.
Yeah.
Instead, we decide we're going to make up an idea of what entire people are: black, white, Asian, Indian, anybody. It doesn't matter. Native American. The
Mhm.
whole thing is that I have been told who you are. I have no reason to educate myself on who you are because I was told. And it's been passed down from generation to generation. And why educate myself on the fact that Justin's gay? You're gay. And my parents said that that's wrong. The end.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that mental health being freedom. Freedom to be what
Bam.
you are, right? Freedom to be, I can do this because your thoughts, and even if you are super racist, cool. Because that's who you choose to be and how you choose to show up in the world. But I know that I'm okay. And also there's elements of safety. I'm not just gonna walk into like the wrong.
The
I'm not gonna,
wrong.
I'm gonna
There
be
we go.
smart. I'm gonna be educated about places to go and places to not go. Right.
Yes.
Um, yeah.
I'm not going to go to a sundown town and walk into a bar.
I am not. It's there. And in their defense, those towns don't seem too cool anyway. Like what is
Right.
What are you trying to protect? Anyway, but when there's the element of safety. I think
Yeah,
that's important, and I know that definitely shows up in a lot of these, right? And I feel like you've done a lot of the work and are in the journey, so like you've been able to do some of that research and like build up yourself to feel safe in some of these spaces.
yeah.
So I think a lot of people just, I heard this thing, I feel unsafe. Why would I? Why would I?
Why would I?
Yeah. Why would I? Why would I? I don't know if this is going to be safe or not. The person, the straight people who are like, if I go to a gay bar, they're all going to hit on me because they think there are a lot of straight people who historically have been in that. Yeah, like that was part of the distance, and it's like that's who do you? Those gays, some of them go to the gym a lot. Like when you go to the club, it's like you just showed up in like jeans and an oversized t-shirt, and you got like all these people like dressed to be seen, and you're gonna be like you. Anyway, I don't mean to say that. I love my straight siblings. All of them. They are welcome to any queer bar.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and if they walk in that queer bar, they should educate themselves on to what a queer experience could be. Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
so if someone hits on you at a queer bar, well, let's take it as a compliment because it is, right?
Because it is. Yeah.
Um, that,
And that's my thing. It's so funny you would say that because I'm like, I have not been in a relationship with a woman since I was in the 11th grade. And there are women who still hit on me to this day, and I'm gay gay. Like, so it's like, no, there definitely won't be any sleeping with you. Uh can't say I wouldn't kiss you because that ended up happening last year and that caught me off guard. But but I'm not going to be sleeping with you. But it's okay if you think that I'm attractive. Women talk about my booty all the time. I'm like, none of this is offensive to me. Thanks. It's a great compliment. But it's the same thing that I say to straight guys because I was about to say there are queer men who hit on me. I don't find them attractive, but it's a wonderful compliment.
mhm.
Thank you. It's the same thing for our cishet brothers. If you don't find a certain woman attractive, it's the same thing for queer men. If you don't find them attractive, thank you so much for the compliment. I am not queer, but I really appreciate the compliment, you know?
Yeah,
The truth is that we should exist in a world because I don't follow up a woman complimenting me with thank you for that, but I'm not straight. I just say thank you for the compliment. So as the straight guy in a queer club, thank you. If he tries to talk to you more after that, then you can share. But if all he did was compliment you, thank you and keep it pushing. If he tries to grab your waist, hold up, buddy. I'm straight, but I do appreciate the compliment. Okay, we're good, unless somebody's drunk and they may go a different way.
yeah,
But I thought about that when I was just saying it to you because I'm like, why do we have to be able to say certain? I mean, why do they have to be able to say certain things that we don't have to? I don't have to tell a woman that I'm gay. First
mhm,
of all, I show up as myself anyway.
yeah,
Like after a while, you're going to hear about my dating life. But
yeah. And
I
then
have a lot of friends,
mhm,
and the thing that I've learned with because I've always had more straight friends than most of my queer friends. But what I've learned with all of them is that there's a certain level of comfortability that you have to have in yourself that a lot of people miss. It's like, and that's where the whole conversation, which I believe can be a little unfortunate when people try to say, if you're uncomfortable, it probably means you're gay. I don't like to go in that direction. It's just ignorance. And a lot of times that ignorance, again, like I said, is generational and it's
mhm,
passed down. And there's also a shame because it's a thing of, I actually don't have a problem with you. But what would all of my friends and family say if I let them know that I was totally okay with you? It's the whole idea of individuality, which leads into, and I won't go into it, but leads into a whole other conversation about society being lemmings, you know? And it's like
okay.
we're all just going to walk off of this cliff together because the idea of individual thought is scary to people.
Does that make sense? A lot of times there's the idea of we have the society, and part of it is like, niceties and like agreements, right? Like I think I'm supposed to agree with people. So if I disagree with this person, maybe we shouldn't be in the same place. Which is not good, which is not good. And I also think there's a deeper level there
Mhm.
where even in the best case scenario of a disagreement, I still think that there is something in that disagreement that each person can hold on to that is their own. Like it can be like, you
Mhm.
know what? I want to live in a city because I value people in certain ways and community and getting around public transit and having lots of options without having to drive. Um, and someone else can be like, I love living in the country because I'm away from people, or like, I love being in nature, I like hikes, whatever, right? And like, we can disagree about the best place to live,
Absolutely.
but it doesn't mean like, well, they're a bad person or one of us are wrong, you know? If they just thought more about, I don't know, the trains transit system, or if I just thought more about trees, like things would be better. And I like that. And especially like with your misfit universe, because I think what you did there was super individual, but still community, right? We're still in the same
Yeah.
universe together. Um,
Yes.
and I love that. I love that. Wow. So this episode that we're recording is part of a series because it's Mental Health Awareness Month this May, which is why actually the question about how do you define mental health in your own words, and
Yeah.
it's freedom, which was great. And so a different question. So I think mental health sometimes gets really big. It's hard to really hold, and a
Yeah.
lot of people sometimes when they use it in public life, it's just a catch-all term for something that somebody else has to deal with, or
Right.
there's a problem we don't really want to solve it. So we'll say it's a mental health issue and to be like, oh, we don't care that much about health is
Right.
maybe, let's say. So there's that, and then there's also like a stigma. There's a mental health, and when people hear that, someone else was saying this, they think mental illness. Um,
Yes.
Whenever someone's like, "Oh, mental health expert," it's like, no, it's the mental illness expert. That's who we need to solve this problem, or this person
Mhm.
doesn't fit into our boxes. Um, so for you, for you, what would you say is good mental health? So what does that look like? What could that look like in your mind?
So I don't believe. I think I won't say I won't believe. I'd like to add on. I don't believe that we could end at good or bad.
Mhm.
I believe that there are healthy
Oh,
ways to move in mental health and
mhm.
unhealthy ways to move in mental health, you know?
Okay.
And so I believe that healthy ways to move into mental health are understanding very important things that I learned when I worked in mental health in Atlanta. Now, before working down there, my entire life was holistic. You know, even as a kid growing up, I didn't believe in meds. And my mother, I was raised by a mom that was like, you don't like it? Bet. So it was like, I very rarely ever had headaches growing up. But if
Mhm.
I did, I told my mom I just want to go through it. And she's like, okay, that's fine. And so when I get to this campus, I am taking care of these 18 to 24-year-olds who all are on different mental health journeys. It's where I learned the difference between schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder. It's where I was able to see that schizophrenia looks different in different people. I was able to truly see the spectrum of autism. And what I learned was the healthy way of operating in that is not telling, which unfortunately has happened to me since moving here.
Mhm.
You don't tell people you don't have to take those pills. You're totally okay. No, we're going to work with you so that you never have to be there again. That is unhealthy. A healthy way of moving in mental health is understanding there is no cure yet for being bipolar. So let's understand that when it comes to you being bipolar, maybe it's best that you stay on these meds. That doesn't mean that we can't work with you in other holistic ways. Last year was the first year I started on my medicine for my bipolar journey.
Mhm.
However, it was the exact same year I had taken psilocybin for the first time. So I had a mushroom journey, you know,
Wow.
and both of them have helped me greatly. That psilocybin journey opened up an experience for me to talk to my grandmother on a deeper level, who's no longer with us, on a deeper level than I've experienced before. Taking my meds for being bipolar has me in a space where I'm not fluctuating, having these manic episodes the way I did before and had no clue what it was, you know? When we operate out of a healthy space when it comes to what mental health is, when we're doing it from a more healthy space instead of unhealthy, we educate ourselves on the fact that schizophrenia isn't this funny thing that just happens and that people hear voices and that's it, you know? We educate ourselves and we understand that things like bipolarism, when it comes to schizophrenia and schizoaffective disorder, there are doors in our mind. And these are doors that could be cracked or could be completely closed our entire lives. And many of us don't know unless you're paying attention to the genes in your family and looking at people who may have had these journeys already. If you're told, mind you, because they may have never been diagnosed themselves. And then one day you have a traumatic experience. And Justin, I'm telling you my story from last year. You have a traumatic experience that shakes you so hard that you end up having a psychotic break. And that door that was closed or just a little cracked is
Mhm.
burst open. Now, when you are healthy and you educate yourself in mental health, Justin, you learn that once that door is open, it can never be closed. That's how schizophrenia works. That's how being bipolar works. To be unhealthy is to tell yourself that that person on the corner who's homeless, who's talking to themselves, they're crazy. There's something that's wrong with them, you know?
Mhm.
There is this person who is on the autistic spectrum who doesn't want you to touch them. When they come around you, they talk really fast. They really can't make eye contact with you. They're crazy. There's something that's wrong with them. They're slow, you know? And the conversations that I started having with my kids, which was so funny because I believe it was the universe preparing me for my own journey, I would tell them, you're superheroes. You're allowing people to make you feel as though you are less than. You're superheroes. And so that's how I talk to people now. Baby, I'm neurodivergent. It's unfortunate that you think I'm less than. I am so much more than you could ever imagine. So much more. I thank God when I wake up that I'm neurodivergent because that means that my mind works differently from the vast amount of people, you know? For people who are neurotypical, I'm like, listen, I already don't like being called normal. Now I don't even have to have typical used for me. I'm divergent. So it's like I move in this healthy way. This is how I see mental health, you know? So it's like when people ask me about, the question that you just asked when it comes to mental health,
Mhm.
it's beautiful. Like, I can't say to a person, what would I say is good mental health? All of it is good, you know? It's like this journey of learning all of these different things about you. That's the good. The unhealthy is if you never have anyone to advocate for you at a young age to seek help. The unhealthy is that if you are 20 years old, 30 years old, what I'm about to say to you, Justin, is going to be very controversial, and I'm okay with
Cool.
that.
Let's go for it.
These mass shootings
Mhm.
that we have in this country, there are people who say that they're tired of people saying that it has to do with mental health. That's unfortunate. I was going to say I'm sorry. I'm not. That's unfortunate. It's unfortunate that you're angry and you want to now say that people use mental health as a scapegoat. For anyone who's listening right now, we all are on a mental health journey. The journeys just look different. Baby, if you're depressed, you're on a mental health journey. If you have anxiety, you're on a mental health journey. You are not as quote unquote normal as you think you are. And the good side of that, the healthy side of that, is making sure that you ask the questions. Telling yourself that you're not something is only making it worse. You making a decision that I'm just going to lay in bed all day and I'm not going to get up. That just means I'm sad today. Everything's going to be fine. Baby, you're depressed. You're somebody who works out every day, but yet this past Saturday and Sunday, you were in bed eating a big thing of ice cream, of which you say is not you. You
Mhm.
don't want to talk to anybody, all your windows are closed, you're depressed. But yet you leave the house and you tell yourself you're perfectly fine the next Monday. Nothing's wrong with you at all. And then you joke people who say out loud they're depressed, who tell you that they are autistic. You joke them. But it goes back to what it was, Justin, that you were saying earlier when it comes to queerness. I am walking in my truth. I am free. And you are scared to be. You are living in an unhealthy mental life. You're living unhealthy. And at the end of the day, no one can get you to a place of goodness. No one can get you to that place of true healthy mental health.
Mhm.
We all have to do it at the end of the day. You can have a therapist, you can have a psychiatrist, you can have an entire self care team, Justin. And if at the end of the day you don't say to yourself, I want to be better, you're going to still linger in the darkness of that unhealthiness for the rest of your life.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think part of the reason why people can use mental health as a scapegoat, and why I agree with you, but I disagree with you, but I agree with you, is I think sometimes because we make it out there,
Mhm.
now there's an actual scapegoat, right? Now it's like, oh no, we don't have to deal with this. That's that. That's the
Yeah.
it's not me, it's not us, it's not how we have certain systems, it's not any of these systemic issues that show up in many different ways. It's
Yes.
that one individual was supposed to find help, um and they're supposed to find help and then follow through with it on their own, not really sharing their journey, not
Hmm.
telling this to us, because once they tell it to us, now we know, and we're gonna like look at them differently. uh
Right.
and it's like that's I think one of the yeah, it's interesting to see where the future goes.
Hmm.
And part of the reason why I asked the question of what's good mental health, is more for that reason, to get
Yeah.
these definitions that are helpful instead
Hmm.
of yeah, you see a therapist every week, therefore that's good mental health, right? Like that's not an answer at all. Like
Right.
it's part of a solution, but like it's not a full thing, and that's not for everyone.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
by hearing what could be good and what could be, or what is healthy and unhealthy, I think it
Yeah.
allows people to see the unhealthy parts that they might have,
Hmm.
and also the healthy parts they may have, and
Absolutely.
and they can look at that diversity of themselves and say, okay, how is my mental health today? Um,
Yes.
what might I do? Who might I reach out to? Because even like with physical health, right? There are many people who I don't know what a healthy body looks like. I was in Mexico last month, and their pharmacies are much less regulated. And
Yeah.
they just have a list of a bunch of drugs that you can buy, um, possibly in Spanish. But some of them, there's a few things are like, do you want some anabolics? And I'm like, oh, they're just like selling steroids that you can just buy,
Here.
right? It's like, oh, so even this person who might have a body that we call like, you know, have the muscles and things, but like using steroids, maybe, I don't know. Uh,
Right.
that doesn't mean it's healthy. Uh,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
similar with mental health, right? There are, when you were talking about, how do you say, you mentioned like someone who may be depressed sometimes, but they don't see themselves as having depression, or that being
Hmm.
part of their story. What came to my mind was like people in church, people who can be the best Christian in their mind because of a mental health problem, and it's like Jesus is my anti Jesus is my Jesus is my drug, literally. And it's like, all right, I'm gonna just dive deep into this thing and I'm gonna be a certain way, and that is my mental health experience.
Oh, baby, people are not ready for that conversation. Woo!
Um,
Oh my word. Oh,
it's it's a thing. It's a thing. And I
oh, you just gave me chills.
that means it's working. No, but I mean, it's because now I'm in my mind, I'm imagining you have like three different people in the past who you're like, ooh, that okay, 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 uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, I replaced the Bible with something else, and I would be like, this person needs to be somewhere else. Like, this person needs
Oh,
help. But you know,
I wish that you could have been there for the conversation that we had this past Wednesday at Thirst. It was so good, especially because all of us, like my friend next to me, is deeply Christian. I believe in something, but I don't give it a name because I've studied everything, you know?
mhm,
So I'm like, I believe that there's something. I'm not agnostic. It's like my thing is that I choose to believe, and this goes into the conversation that I was telling you that we had. And I'm saying this because of what you were just talking about as far as mental health. I shared with them something that I started talking about in the 10th grade in high school.
mhm,
And it was something that was so controversial to people, but they had no choice but to stop and think about it. And to this day, my hand, to this day, I have not had one person that was able to answer it. I started saying in 10th grade, I said, so if you were to find out that God never existed tomorrow, what would happen? And I would pause for a minute. And of course, like I said, they couldn't, they're, what? Huh?
mhm,
And so my follow up would be because there are the words and then there's the belief. So if you're going off of what you were told about who God is, then when you're told that this omnipotent presence never existed, you know,
mhm,
we did just come from the apes and, it was like, and here we are, and ta da, Big Bang Theory, that it never was a God, you'd run out into the streets and probably start killing people, wouldn't you? Your whole idea of faith and what it is that you believe in would just be gone. And they were sitting there stupefied. And I haven't brought it up a lot, but
mhm,
every now and then throughout the course of my life, if people are like real staunch, I'm like, let me ask you this. And because my thing is that at the end of the day, Justin, are we listening to the beauty of what it is that was in that book? When you talk about how you want to be more like Jesus, it's
mhm.
laughable to me. Because when I see it on the back of your car, my thing is you're literally doing the complete opposite of it. I don't know who you read about, but
Yeah.
so my thing is that if you find out Jesus never existed, that doesn't mean that the wonderful things that he did in those times, quote unquote, isn't something you should follow for your life. So talk to me about the fact that if you find out all of that is a fairy tale, all of that is a story, why does that mean that that isn't how you should still govern your life? Now that it doesn't exist anymore, that just means fuck it. Forgive me if I shouldn't be cursing. But it's like if it's just a thing where I know that's not real anymore, so now I can just go out and we can have the purge, you know?
Yeah.
But it's like people in this whole idea of I go back to again individual thought.
Mhm,
This whole idea of I get to question. I was raised by a Christian woman who told me to question everything. And because of that, I've spent my entire life researching and studying and learning because my mother told me, don't listen to what these other Christians tell you. Learn everything, question and say it doesn't make sense, you know?
yeah.
And I'm sure you've come across, and I've come across people
There's
who
that.
don't question anything. Whatever it is you say, I'm going to do. And it's like, so at the end of the day, what do you truly believe in? You know? Do you have a connection to anything. And when I say anything, it doesn't have to be beyond. Do you
Mhm.
have a connection to yourself? You know, are you in tune with yourself? Everything that you're operating out of is what it is that you're getting from other people. What's happening inside? You feel me?
Yeah, and some Christian traditions, um, are you in tune with yourself? And some people would be like, no, I'm not supposed to be. And that's just like, wait, but you are, even if you don't admit it.
Even
Because
come on.
you have to read, even if you say the Bible says this, you have to read that. You have to understand what those individual words mean. You have to put that sentence together and say, this is what it means. Like, you got to connect those dots. But it's a very it is a different direction. And I've heard that same thing too, where people are like, if it weren't for the Bible, right, that means everything is cool, everything is fair game. And then what I joke with some other people about that is like, okay, you know what? You need the Bible. You keep this because this is the only thing stopping you from this, like, going on a
Yeah,
rampage. So
yeah.
have fun, you know?
Have fun.
Thank you for So I'm going to connect it to what I said earlier. Thank you for using this Bible as a straitjacket. Therefore, it's stopping you from like the danger you might impose on others or yourself. Right? Like
Oh,
I I don't think I thought of it that way before, but I think I mean, go for it.
oh, that is such a quotable. Oh my God. That is such a quotable. Oh, thank you for using it as a. Oh, I loved that.
Um,
I loved that. Oh, that's real. Ooh, okay. I had to bring myself back to
uh,
the conversation.
no, you're right. You're right. Sometimes you say something and I'm like, oh, I want that on a t-shirt. Like I want to like chat GPT, make it happen. Um,
Right.
but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Like we all have a mental health journey, right?
Yeah.
It's part of our lives. It's part of our wellness, and we approach it different ways. And
Absolutely.
sometimes it's just certain people have more resources to help. Certain people have more healthy coping mechanisms up to a point.
Mhm.
You know? Certain people like, I'll never be depressed, but I will work all day. I will
Yeah.
put down.
Yes.
I will do 80, 100-hour weeks, and just keep going. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
is that healthy? Is
Right.
are there like mental health problems that affect extra productivity? All these questions and more.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Oh Lord.
it's there. It's just like, you know what? The person who challenged that into work, they're like, yes,
Yeah.
we'll give you a hand clap. The person who channels that into like their own free thought and like, you know what?
Mhm.
Why live in a house? Why have these structures? Why work at a job where it doesn't really matter? Who's to say one
Yeah.
coping mechanism is different than the other? But then it gets into those systemic things, and I think the
Mhm.
real reason why people use mental health as a cop out is because they imagine there's no way to make it better, and
Mhm.
it'll be super expensive to make it better. So then it's just like, oh, there's no money for that. My bad. It would be
Which
interesting.
is an entire episode by itself when it comes to the proper resources and accessibility when
Mhm.
it comes to mental health, when it comes to meds, when it comes to just being able to afford a psychiatrist or a therapist, and everything that goes into that. The fact that you need to be able to have insurance to be able to get it, you know?
Yeah.
And yet we look at so many of our unhoused people that are on the street. And you want to talk about how, this is somebody who is a Vietnam vet or something like that, and they didn't do anything with their lives. Do you understand the level of PTSD that they experienced over there? Like, seriously. And do you understand how much help they need from us? And that's day in and day out on levels, like levels, the richest person in the world to the person who is struggling to be able to put pennies together every single day. We all have mental health journeys. And the only way it's going to get better is if we start seeing each other. And I always put it in capital SEE, see, because it's one thing to see one another lowercase. It's something totally different to see people, to actually open your eyes, look past what it is you're going through for a moment, Because the thing that bothers people, Justin, is that it's like, look at other people. Do you not know what it is that I'm dealing with? Baby, we're all dealing with something. Just take a moment. Take a moment to just pause and see what's happening on the other side of you. You know, there's a woman that is crying out for help across the street. You have no idea why. It takes nothing to go across the street and just ask, "Are you okay?" You know? And doing the work that I did in Atlanta, being able to see the way each of us, as far as the therapist, the case managers, how everybody handled the kids, it showed you a lot about the shadow work that they need to do
Mhm.
because of how they would come at the kids when they would act up. The kids would act some way toward me, and they would always be surprised at how calm I was. And now I'm not perfect. Every now and then they got me, but they
Mhm.
would see how calm I was. And my whole thing is, I understand that you were on a journey. Not only that, but y'all all come from homelessness and being in foster care. So you have had people who have just tossed you away over and over again. My kids would hate having to go to another therapist, Justin, because their whole thing was, I just got used to my fourth one. I have to now go and tell my traumatized ass story to a fifth one all over
Mhm.
again. And it's like, we need to hold space for that, which is why when I'm at us helping us and I'm having my classes on shadow work and stuff with the different case managers, the people on their caseloads, I'm like, I'm here. Take my work number if you need to. Reach out to me, because at the end of the day, I have learned how to be able to be dumped on and how to dump it off somewhere else. I've done the work long enough to learn how to do that. I can be that person for you, you know?
Yeah.
Because we need more people in the world who are able to say, I see you. I see you, Justin. When you talk, I'm listening to hear you, not to prepare to speak next. You know, I'm listening to hear you. And if we have more people operating like that, we would definitely have a much better world. We're so wrapped up in ourselves. Here's the shit. I'm sorry, I'm gonna stop right here. Ooh, this is the
Okay.
thing.
You got
We
this.
are so wrapped up in ourselves and yet pay no attention to ourselves whatsoever. How do
Mhm.
you do that?
Mhm.
How do you work that magic trick? How do you completely close yourself in? How are you in this chrysalis of self and yet you're paying no attention to you whatsoever? You stop at the very first layer and you're like, I'm gonna just stop right here. I'm not gonna notice what's going on in the rest of the world. I'm not gonna pay attention to it unless I need to get angry about something because I'm pissed off because of what's going on back here that I won't look at.
Mhm.
So I'm not dealing with all of the crap that's going on in my subconscious. I'm not dealing with my shadow because I'm not dealing with my shadow. My shadow is going to take any opportunity to jump forward. And now I'm going to be pissed because of what's happening in Palestine. Now I'm going to get pissed off because of what it is that happened at work today. Now I'm going to get pissed off because you're not doing a good enough job Biden against what it is that Trump's doing. Now I'm going to get pissed off because of Kendrick Lamar and Drake, even though I don't know either one of them personally. You're going to do all of these things, but you ain't stopped to do shit for yourself yet. But yet you're hiding in this chrysalis, ignoring everyone else who's actually in front of you. You will fight harder for these two rappers having this quote unquote beef than you will for somebody at your job who you can see clearly is not on the right journey with their mental health. We have a twisted way of operating in this society. And we have to start being able to get to a point where we break these stigmas down. Because if we break the stigmas down, we'll be able to see it. You can't see it until you start getting to a point where you start calling bullshit on the own things that you're doing.
It is hard for people to go past that first layer.
Mhm.
And I think there's also like that opportunity there. I think many of us have had parents who were like, "What layer? What do you mean?" And further back, it's like, "Oh, someone's got an issue. We actually don't talk about that issue. We're just going to avoid as much as we can." And
Absolutely.
not see that. Uh,
Yes.
and then also, you know, depending on where we grew up, uh, um, being Black in America, being in certain cities, whether the North or the South,
Yeah.
there are ways of here's here's what we've seen, here's what happens, and here's what we think you have to do to protect yourself.
Yes.
One of which is seeing or not
Yeah.
seeing. Okay, we don't want to see. There are reasons why we choose to not see and why they've chosen to not see and why they've taught us to not see.
Absolutely.
And I think about the event that you're doing this Wednesday and what you've done before. What I hear is we're creating a space to be seen and giving some of the tools and moderation to support that.
Yes.
Because I think like Brene Brown talks about like men should be more vulnerable, or like women are like, my husband needs to be more vulnerable. And then like the husband will go up to her and be like, if my family saw me cry, they would be like, how am I supposed to do that? But I can't cry, right? Like
But
I have to be strong. And I think that the idea of that story resonates with like what you're saying and like why we have to create these spaces of safety
absolutely.
such that people can learn, because you know it's hard to see our shadows. So in my mind, in a way, it's like if we could just see our shadows, we would. Okay, if we could see our shadows, half of us would be able to fix it. Like we know. There are some people who are like, why do I get mad all the time? I don't know, but I'm gonna get mad. They might not want that, and they might
Hmm.
see some of the effects of that in their lives, and they're like, but I don't have a better way. I don't see a better way,
Yeah.
and there's stigma around the mental health, like asking for help and support.
Yeah.
Because it's like, no, but I was able, it was just a weekend. Like I was able to get back onto it. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen like what, 3 times a year, maybe. That's
Yes.
not worth um something,
Right.
right? It's like it's not that bad. It's not that bad.
Yes.
And I think part of what I hope to take from some of these conversations I'm having this month um is, I don't know, just to see more of the diversity of mental health,
Yeah.
how it shows up, how it
Hmm.
might be showing up in our lives in healthy and less healthy ways. Um,
Yes.
and more importantly, how we might be able to talk about it better. How we might be able to see
Yes.
it. Because, if we don't see it, we can't really change it. Well,
There we go.
if we don't see it, it might be hard to change. We might change the wrong things.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Right? It's
The
like,
one of the first steps
mhm,
in understanding how to see your pain, how to see your trauma, is an understanding that a lot of people, way more than we would like to admit, has Stockholm syndrome when it comes to their trauma. Their trauma is comforting. It's what they know.
yeah.
It's safe, you know? So it's like, what are you telling me that I need to do better? Like this is what it is that I've known. I've grown up with this.
Mhm.
This is reality for me. And it's like, but that's not where you're supposed to live, you know? You were taken away from who you truly are. You were snatched a long time ago. And it's okay for you to find your way home. Or it's okay to allow somebody to come and find you. It is. But you have to be able to admit to yourself, I'm comfortable here. Because there's the acknowledgement,
Yeah.
you know? We're constantly wanting to skip over things, but acknowledgement comes first. For me, there is taken acknowledgement of things in my life that I didn't think showed me in my best self, And it's like, okay, this isn't something I don't like the whole idea of like what is something that I don't like when they say you lost or it was a flaw, one of those words. I'm like, everything is a lesson, you know?
Mhm.
Everything is a lesson. We're learning things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I don't think I'm a big fan of loss. I think that's what it is. It's like I learned a lesson today. If I'm playing in a basketball game and if at the end we weren't the winners, baby, I took a lesson. I get that you're going to say that we lost, but I figured out something in that game that's going to help me to become better. That's
Mhm.
the kind of stuff that Kobe did, You feel me?
Yeah.
So it's like if you're going through this journey of Stockholm, then you have to say to yourself, okay, if someone is talking to me, if I've met with my life coach, if I've met with my therapist, they're saying these things to me. We working in mental health and wellness may believe that our client is walking away and they're not hearing us, but a gem is always placed. A gem is always placed.
Mhm.
And at some point in time, they'll say to themselves, that little nugget about me having Stockholm syndrome when it comes to my trauma, let me sit with that for a minute, you know? And it's like, how much of this have I let myself be comfortable with? Some people may begin to make their journey out of where they were, Justin, in about 5 months. For other people, it could be 5 years. That just goes back to what I say about seeing people. We
Mhm.
try to rush people to get to where we need for them to be. In relationships, in friendships, in family, we want to rush people to get to where we want them to be when all of our journeys are different. And it's like if we understand, if we did this, in the physical idea of Stockholm, if we knew that it was a young lady who was kidnapped at the age of 8 and she is 16 now, and we're trying to get her away from what she believes is this family, it's going to be a journey to be able to get her to understand that these aren't the people that gave
Yeah.
birth to her, you know? It's
Mhm.
going to take a minute. So we have to do the same thing when it comes to mental health and wellness. We have to understand that we have to take time with people. We can't just say to ourselves, this is what you experience. I got the solution. Bam. Why are you not doing better yet? It doesn't work that way. We have to be able to take the time with them, especially if we want this world to be different, if we want it to not look the way it does right now, then we have to be able to be patient. And we know so many people, and I say we because I know you do too. We know so many people in this world who will tell you almost like a badge of honor, I'm not a patient person. I'm not patient like that. I don't know about you, but I don't got that kind of patience. Then
Mhm.
why do you believe we still exist in the world that we do right now? That is not a badge of honor.
Yeah.
We should not be proud of being impatient because it's why we exist in the world we do now.
A book I was reading, maybe it was The Big Leap. He talks about, people don't have time for stuff. Like the example of a parent is working and their kid is like, "Hey, do you want to go play this thing?" I'm like, "Oh, I can't do that. I don't have time." And then,
Yes.
but if your child walked in and said, "Hey, look, my elbow is sticking out and there's blood and it hurts," right? It doesn't matter what you're doing. You're going to go fix that. So it's not that you don't have time. It's that you see something as not fully a priority. I
Yes.
think with people who are like patient or may not have the patience, they may have other things that like this is the priority in my mind, right?
Right.
I don't have patience, but like I got to go to work because I got to pay my rent. Because if I don't pay my rent, then like, right? And and that's why it's like this both and there are certain people who, like you said earlier, like some of the helpers have their own shadow work that they need to do.
Yes.
So it's like also okay, this person may not have patience, but they also may not have the right tools right now to
There you go.
really
There you go.
be the person they need. And I think that's it's like this both and it's like yes, and we get to educate ourselves, we get to learn more, and we get to see. Because I also think sometimes the act of seeing and being seen
Mhm.
has much more power than we give it credit.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's like, no, but I need to have the answers. Okay. I need to do my research and understand why this person has another thing. Like, oh, here's what's going on in your brain, and here's the chemical, and then like here's this, that, and the other, right? This happened to you before, and this is how you make sense of it. Bam. Now I can see you.
Right.
Sometimes it's just being right there with them and allowing what they say, what they share, like seeing that.
Absolutely.
And maybe that's right. Maybe that's it. Like I don't even know how to help, but I will see you.
But I will
And
see you.
so you said this Wednesday, May 15th, you're having an event at Thirst. Do you plan to have another one of these? Uh,
Yes, I do.
okay.
I do. So we're in talks with Thirst, and hopefully we're still able to have the event there next month. I've never been a fan of constantly moving around to locations. Whenever I get a
Mhm.
location, my goal is to stick there. So hopefully we can work it out. But we plan to have the event every third Wednesday.
Okay.
And so it was brought to my attention by one of the people on my team. They were like, do you know what the third Wednesday of June is? And I went to look at my calendar and I was like, yo, the third Wednesday is Juneteenth. I
Oh,
was like, we absolutely have to have an event that day. Absolutely. So, it's like I put into the universe that it can still happen at Thirst, but
mhm.
if not, like we're going to find a place.
Right.
Absolutely.
That's very fair. As you define mental health as freedom, there's a lot there. There's a lot there.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah.
Yes. There's a lot there. So yeah, yeah. So no matter when this episode is released, it will be before Juneteenth. And
There we go.
we will
Yes.
make sure that there is a little, even if it's a little update later, they'll be like, hey, episode, something happening Juneteenth, DC.
Make sure you're
Yeah. But awesome. That's beautiful. Yeah. What's a healthy habit that you would love to see in the queer and black community in the of mental health?
so it sounds funny because it also it almost sounds like shameless self-promotion, but I believe there needs to be more events like the healing space.
Mhm.
I believe that there needs to be more events where we get to sit down and have tough conversations. But I believe that there also needs to be moderators and people who are there who genuinely want to keep the peace and are okay with everyone having different ideas of how we get to where we need to be. Because the truth is that if we can have these conversations as a community openly and honestly, we will be able to find that balance, you know?
Mhm.
When we get to a point where we can say to ourselves, let's stop being in these silos, you know what? Every other month, it could get to a point where it's once a week. It's like once a week, let us meet here in this space so that we can have these conversations to get a better idea of what it is you're going through, what I'm going through. You know, I think that that's something that could really benefit us. I would love to see it become something that's around the country. And it's like we get together to have these conversations. And we all within this community have gone through different levels of pain, you know?
Mhm.
And the way that it shows up is all according to the work that we've been able to do or how deep that trauma is. So we need to be able to have that space that we give each other every day, you know? It's how I show up for my trans sisters in understanding that there's a privilege that I have that you don't. How do I show up for you so that you know that I see you and that I want to be able to stand with you and when to stand back,
Yeah.
you know? It's
Mhm.
like and when I talk about that thing as far as being able to see yourself and understanding your privilege, we got to understand the levels to that. It's levels to that within our own community, within the Black queer community that encompasses, non binary, trans, or like our whole community. We have to be able to see our privilege because there are people who will say, I was beat up my entire life for being queer. We must hold space for you, but you must also hold space for that little girl who was assigned male at birth, but always knew that she was a girl, that she was a woman, and she has not been able to live the life that she wants to live. We understand your pain. We hold space for your pain, and we're going to be here for your pain. But your pain doesn't trump hers, you know?
Yeah.
I have been able to walk my entire life, Justin. Not I have still never been called the F word by anybody who wasn't gay. I'm in my 40s. It's never
Mhm.
happened. I understand my privilege. And in understanding that privilege, I don't walk away and act like I don't see anything. I show up for everybody else who doesn't get to be, Aurora Monroe or Scott Summers or Jean Grey,
Mhm.
somebody who looks like Beast, somebody who looks like Nightcrawler. We
Yeah.
have to be able to show up for those people who can't shy away from who they are. I can walk around, you may not be able to just snap your finger and say he's gay, but there are people in our community who are Mystique. And this is just who I'm. Well, she's a shapeshifter, so you can't really use her. But Beast, it's like, I'm blue fur. I can't hide that. This is just who I am, but that doesn't mean I don't deserve love too. So this is what it is that we have to be willing to do as a community. We have to be able to own our privilege, no matter who you are, because you could be somebody who's a trans man with privilege over somebody else. Let's be very clear
Mhm.
about that. And be able to say that now that I understand my privilege that I have, now that I understand that we are all a part of the same community, what can we do to make sure that we're showing up for ourselves instead of tearing ourselves apart?
I love that, and it's important. And the more we see each other within our same community and see some of those differences, yeah, I think the more educated we'll. I don't like that word in that context. The more, the wiser we'll be. Let's say, the more we can see our own privilege and be okay with it.
Yes.
See our own pain and
Yes.
be okay with that too,
Yes.
so that when we see others' pain, it's not we're not comparing, we're not like competing on pain, because that's
Exactly.
not fun. But being able to be there together and being like, all right, here's how our journeys do intersect, and here's how we can all actually move forward together in this journey. But
Absolutely.
we can. I was gonna ask the same question in a different way, but I might have save that for another episode. This was part one of Raven's podcast episodes. Part two will be released in the next few weeks. And in that episode, Raven will talk more about his work he does with Us Helping Us. Thank you for listening to this episode of Queer Changemakers. This is Justin, and I hope you are able to get some inspiration and maybe some ideas about how you can take action to create positive change in your life, communities, and beyond. See you next time.